What's up, everybody? I hope y'all are doing well today. I'm Anthony. You're watching Palmetto Prepared. Today we're going to be discussing baking breads and the ways to leaven them. All right, now hold on. Before you turn away from the video because you think it doesn't apply to you, let me ask you a simple question. What is the point of having flour or stashing flour if you're not going to make bread with it? Do you really think you're going to be able to survive on porridge alone? I don't think so. So you have to think about being able to make bread, and not to mention you have to understand that leavening that bread, i.e. putting air into it, is going to make that bread 1,000 times better. Because let's face it, do you really want to be stuck eating nothing but porridge or hardtack? I don't think so. That's why this video is important, and that's why I'm bringing it to y'all. All right, now what is leavening? Simple. Leavening is basically what makes your bread go from this to this. And there's multiple different ways to do that, and I'm going to discuss 4 on this video. Basically the 4 that you're most likely going to hear about. I'm sure there's others out there, especially region specific, but these 4 are the ones that are going to be the ones that are going to hear more often than not. I'm going to list them all, and then I'm going to go back and talk about them. But you have biological, chemical, steam, and mechanical. All right, I'm going to hit the most important one first, and that is biological. The reason why I think this is the most important is because this is the most popular. This is what you think about when you think about breads. So biological is basically using a yeast or a wild yeast to make your bread rise. The ancient Egyptians are the ones that are credited with starting it. I'm sure it's older than that, but they're the only ones that gave us like a historical record of it with writings and whatnot. Basically, someone left out a bowl of porridge on a hot day, and they came back to it, and it was frothing. It was foaming. So it means the wild yeast had got into it, and they'd already started working. So then they decided to bake it, and boom, next thing you know, it went and rised. So basically, whenever we talk about biological, we're talking about yeast. And yeast is just a natural fungus that occurs everywhere. There are 4 main types of yeast, but the one I'm going to hit on is going to be baker's yeast, and you can find this everywhere. It's got a certain name to it, but I can't pronounce it, and it lives basically on your skin. I mean, it can be found literally everywhere. But basically all yeast is going to do is it's going to transform the sugars in the dough into ethanol and carbon dioxide. Now the reason why this is very important is because when you combine water and flour, and obviously the salt, when you start kneading and mixing that dough together, it makes gluten. Okay, it's got 2 proteins in it naturally that start to form gluten. And gluten is what gives a dough the ability to stretch. Now, the whole purpose of kneading your dough is to make that dough more stretchy, or stretchier. Yeah, I think that's the right word, stretchier, not more stretchy. That makes no sense. But stretchier, to be able to capture that carbon dioxide. Because when yeast meets a sugar, just like with brewing alcohol, just like when making wine, which is brewing alcohol, but yeah, which is when you're doing bread making, all you're doing is you're taking the byproduct of the yeast working and using it to your advantage. So when you're making alcohol, you give yeast sugars to make alcohol. When you're making bread, you give yeast sugars to make alcohol, yes, but you're more concerned with that byproduct, and that byproduct is carbon dioxide. So when you make that dough stretchy, all you're doing is you're allowing a whole bunch of little air pockets to collect, because obviously whenever yeast make alcohol, they fart carbon dioxide. So all you're really doing is you're making your bread capable of catching fungi farts and blow up like balloons. So when you knead a dough, when you really get in there and work it and make it stretchier, the stretchier the dough is, the more air it'll be able to hold without busting. That's why if you just crudely mix a dough together and bake it, it's not going to rise near as well as if you actually knead it correctly. So a good kneading procedure is very key in this, because it's going to be able to capture more carbon dioxide, and it's going to allow the bread to rise more than not kneading it correctly. So that's the main one I wanted to hit here. Another form of biological is barm. You'll hear me talk about it later on, but barm is the byproduct of making beer. It's the foam off the top. So instead of having a commercial yeast or a wild yeast, they would use barm. This was what they used to do way back in the day. So the first one I wanted to hit was biological, because it's one you're going to hear about the most, and it comes in terms of you can get the fast-acting yeasts like the packets like this, or it comes in here. Fleischmann's is usually the biggest one. But those are going to be your yeasts, or you can capture wild yeast that are naturally floating around by making a sourdough. And obviously, like I just said, the barm with a byproduct of making beer. Those are going to be your yeasts. The second one is going to be chemical. And when I say chemical, it's because it's basically harnessing a chemical reaction to make your bread rise. These are also referred to as quick breads because they don't need that near as long proofing or rise time that yeast breads do. And when I say chemical leavening, usually two things are going to pop in everyone's head, and that's going to be baking soda and baking powder. All right. Now, baking soda is, you'll hear it called bicarbonate of soda or sodium bicarbonate, depending on if you're from England or not. But it requires an acid to work. Now, if you just put a simple mixture of flour, water, salt, and baking soda, nothing's going to happen because baking soda is a base, all right? Baking soda is on the pH scale about an 8 to 9, so it needs an acid mixed with it to make gas. Like, ever remember when you're in 3rd grade and you put baking soda and vinegar together and you get that big foaming action like the volcano? That's what you're doing inside your bread. You're combining a base with an acid to make carbon dioxide. Cool? We all on the same page now? I know I probably just blew somebody's mind. But usually you're going to see this in a lot more quick breads. The batter, it's going to be usually called batter versus a dough, but it's going to be a little bit wetter to be able to hold in that reaction. When you do baking soda, you're going to see this in things like Irish soda bread or banana bread, that kind of thing. And there's some good examples of acids to be able to pair with baking soda are going to be buttermilk, lemon juice, yogurt, sour cream, molasses, honey, and cream of tartar. Those are going to be the ones that you're going to want to add in with baking soda to give you that reaction. It's going to be quick, it's usually not in the oven very long, and you're going to get a very fast rise. Cool? The second one I wanted to hit on was baking powder. Baking powder right here it has its advantages over baking soda because basically it's got two different kind of reactions. It's only activated when it's wetted, but it can also be a double acting thing to where it activates also when it is heated. So the best thing about a baking powder, if I could just simple it down for everybody, is it's baking soda with an acid with it already. Cool? Meaning you don't have to worry about adding an acid like a vinegar, lemon juice, that kind of stuff, because there's already a granulated acid with the granulated baking soda. Does that make sense? So both ingredients are there, they just need to have a water mixture to activate them. Okay? And then on top of that, once you heat it, you get another reaction, which is why it's very good to put it in things like pancakes and biscuits because they rise a little bit whenever you're mixing, and they rise again when they're heated. All right, so that's usually what you're going to be seeing for chemical. The one thing I wanted to also mention here, though, is just because it's baking soda and baking powder does not mean that you can interchange them in a recipe. Like I said, if you have a baking powder only recipe, you can't just put baking soda because it needs that acid. So just remember, when you're making any kind of breads, and you're going to use a chemical reaction, if you're using baking soda, you need to make it, bring in an acid. There's a reason why I keep repeating that over and over again, because it's just that important. So just remember that if you're going to be stashing away a lot of baking soda thinking you're going to be making a whole bunch of cool quick breads, if you don't have an acid with it, you're not going to get crap. Cool. The third one is going to be a lot less mentioned. You're really not going to see this very often unless you are into hardcore baking like desserts, but it is going to be steam. Steam is a leavening agent. It's basically what you're going to do is you're going to trap a whole bunch of air in between layers. So you're going to see this a lot in like pastries or beignets and all that kind of stuff. But all you're doing is you're folding different layers of dough, very thin layers, and hoping, with things like butter and whatnot, that there's going to be some air that's going to trap in between the two. And then when you heat it really fast and everything steams, it's going to puff up. So that's why I'm not really talking about it too much, because in reality, unless you're going to be living some sort of high lifestyle in the in a prepping scenario, you're really never going to be able to use this, and you're not going to need it. So I'm just mentioning it here so I can say I did it. And the fourth and final one, it kind of rolls along the same line as steam, but it's mechanical and mechanical leavening. And what you're going to get with mechanical leavening is you'll see it more often when you trying to make butter, but all you're doing is you're whipping cream and forcing in a whole bunch of air, so it's whipped cream. All right, same principle here. You do that with an egg white. When you whip an egg white a lot and you get all that air forced into it, congratulations. That is your leavening agent. You're forcing air mechanically by whipping to put it into a cake. You're gonna see this in things like sponge cakes. And again, just like with steam, there probably isn't gonna be very many times you're gonna do this, especially in a grid down or preparedness scenario, but hey, I'm just giving you guys the option because who knows? Some of y'all might be living the thriving, awesome, amazing life and really be putting out some hardcore quality baked goods, and I would love to go to your house so I can start eating some beignets and sponge cakes during that kind of scenario. Those are the 4 types of leavening, and I'm trying to get through a couple of these videos out of the way so we can really jump into bread baking. I've been doing a lot of it lately because it is just that important to me. It's one of those things where if you look back at the beginning of really recorded history, bread has been around, and it's so much so that if you are a fan of Christianity or read the Bible, you're going to see obviously in the prayer, give us this day our daily bread. Bread was a staple back in the diet, obviously, of everyone in that region, the bread basket, Mesopotamia, Fertile Crescent, that kind of thing. And not to mention, it makes several references in the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, all those books. Bread is everywhere. So there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why we've been making it for literally millennia, like several millennia. So I know it's gotten a bad rap over the last 10 years because bread makes you fat. Or it could be the fact that we've been lacing our 4-ingredient bread with like 40 ingredients because we're trying to make the longest shelf life possible to where it's not really real bread anymore. Gee, I'll let you think about that one. But that's why I think this is so important, and that's why I really wanted to hit it first, to be able to bring y'all along to know what I'm talking about when you see future videos of me actually making bread. Another thing is, I know some of y'all want to stash away a whole bunch of yeasts like me, but these have a shelf life. So when I was mentioning making sourdough, it's because this isn't going to be around forever. So if you want to be able to continue making yeasts or yeast breads, you're going to have to know how to harness wild yeast and make something like a sourdough, because let's face it, that's going to run out. They've only been really around since what, 1900, and we've been baking bread for several thousand years. Yeast, commercial yeast have only been around for 100 years. Think for it, you're probably going to have to figure out how to make a sourdough. You're probably going to have to figure out how to use natural microbes that they didn't even know about thousands of years ago. Think about it. They didn't know about those thousands of years ago, but they were still able to use them and harness them. So it's just things like that that just, truly blow my mind, and I really do have an appreciation for them. Right, I know that was kind of a big mouthful, but hey, it's all out of the way now. Now we have an idea of what leavening is and what it is for. I'm going to be able to jump into further things like making sandwich bread, which I will be doing because I finally perfected that. I know a lot of people were curious about it, and when it comes down to the fact that bread now costs what, $4, $3-4 at the grocery store, that's absolutely ridiculous when you can make it at home for less than $1. And I'm going to show you how to do that because it's super easy, and if we can just spare so much time during a couple times a week to be able to do this stuff, put down the Facebook, put down the social media, and actually get back to making your own food, hey, things could be 10 times better for everybody in our family. So if you learned something from this video, please give me that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd love to have you here. Please consider subscribing, and I'll catch y'all later, all right? Bye.